I always thought if my marriage fell apart, I would see it coming. That there would be a clear moment, an argument too harsh, a confession too painful, that would signal the end. But that's not how it happens. The slower, quieter. It starts with a glance that lasts too long. A laugh that doesn't quite reach the eyes. A kiss that feels more like a habit than love. That's how it began with Emily. I first noticed it in the little things. The way she suddenly started dressing differently. Sleek, expensive outfits that I'd never seen before. The delicate gold bracelet on her wrist, one I hadn't bought. The faint, expensive perfume that lingered on her skin, one I had never smelled before. Then came the business trips. First, I believed her. She had always been ambitious, always pushing for more in her career. But these trips were different, too frequent, too vague. And when she came home, she was distant, cold, like she was living in a different world, one that I wasn't part of. One evening, as she was getting ready for another conference, I finally asked, "Emily?" I said, keeping my voice even. "Where exactly are you going this time?" She paused, just for a fraction of a second. Then she turned, smiling that practiced smile I had grown to hate. "I told you, Mark. Business negotiations in Chicago." "With who?" Her hand faltered as she reached for an earring. Another hesitation. Then, smoothly, "Just some investors." I studied her. "So why the new jewelry? The new clothes?" She met my eyes in the mirror, her expression impossible to read. "You're imagining things." She turned back to her reflection, brushing a hand through her hair like the conversation was already over. But I knew. I felt it. Something was wrong. And whatever it was, I was going to find out. Doubt is a quiet thing. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. It grows. It spreads. Until every moment, every word, every touch feels like a lie. Emily's business trip was supposed to last 3 days. But on the second night, I saw something that made my stomach turn. I was scrolling through my phone, mindlessly checking the news, when a photo stopped me cold. It was an article about a high-profile gala in New York. A political fundraiser, expensive, exclusive. And in the background of one of the photos, blurred but unmistakable, was Emily. Not in Chicago. Not at a business meeting. But standing beside Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan Pierce was the kind of man whose name carried power. A billionaire. A political manipulator. A man who pulled strings behind the scenes, making or breaking careers with a single whisper. He was also the kind of man Emily had always despised. She had ranted about men like him for years, corrupt, entitled, dangerous. So why was she standing next to him, dressed in a sleek black gown, her hand lightly resting on his arm? Why was she smiling? When she came home the next night, I was waiting. The moment she walked through the door, I saw it. The way she barely met my eyes. The way she set her bag down carefully, like she knew something was wrong. "How was Chicago?" I asked, voice steady. She hesitated. A flicker of something, guilt, fear, crossed her face. Then she smiled. "Exhausting. You know how these trips are." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I saw a photo of a gala in New York. Looked nice." Emily's entire body stiffened. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "You must have seen someone who looks like me," she said, forcing a small laugh. "I wasn't there." She was lying. And for the first time in my marriage, I felt something deep in my chest snap. If she thought I would just accept this, if she thought I would let her walk all over me, she was wrong. So very wrong. Lies have a way of rotting the air around them. And ever since Emily walked through that door, my house, our house, felt like it was filled with poison. She thought her words were enough to bury the truth. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't going to let her keep pretending. That night, I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. She had lied to my face. She had looked me in the eye and told me she was in Chicago, when I had seen her, clear as day, at that gala with Jonathan Pierce. She didn't even seem worried about getting caught, because she thought I wouldn't do anything about it. I turned my head slightly, watching her as she slept. Her breathing was slow, steady. Her lips were slightly parted, her face relaxed, as if nothing was wrong, as if she wasn't keeping secrets. I clenched my jaw, my fingers curling into a fist beneath the sheets. If she wouldn't tell me the truth, then I would find it myself. The next morning, I waited until she left for work. Then I went through her things. Not because I was paranoid, because I knew, because every instinct in my body told me that something was wrong. I started with her purse, lipstick, wallet, perfume, then something that didn't belong. A business card, sleek, black, expensive. Jonathan Pierce, Executive Director, Caldwell Industries. A direct line, personal email. I turned it over in my hands, my pulse steady. Emily wasn't just working with him. She had access to him, personal access. And the moment I realized that, something in me turned to ice. I kept searching. Her closet, her desk, her car, and then her laptop. It was locked, of course. But Emily wasn't as careful as she thought. I entered the password, our wedding date. The same password she had used for years. It opened in an instant. And what I found inside shattered everything. Emails, dozens of them, between her and Jonathan. Some were professional, but others were intimate. Jonathan, you looked stunning last night. Emily, I had to make sure I impressed you. Jonathan, you always do. My stomach twisted as I scrolled further. Emily, asterisk, I can't talk right now. Mark is asking questions. Asterisk, Jonathan. Asterisk, then give him answers. But not the truth. Asterisk. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. She wasn't just having an affair. She was working for him. She was using me. And Jonathan? He was using her. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something bigger. And I wasn't just going to sit back and let it happen. I was going to tear it apart. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the emails, reading them over and over, letting the words carve into me like a blade. This wasn't some simple affair. This wasn't just a wife sneaking around with another man, whispering sweet nothings behind her husband's back. This was calculated, strategic. Emily wasn't just sleeping with Jonathan Pierce. She was playing a game, and I had been the fool sitting on the sidelines, completely unaware. By the time Emily got home that evening, I had already cleaned everything up. Her laptop was back in place. The business card was exactly where I found it. Everything looked normal, but I wasn't. I was done being the clueless, devoted husband she thought I was. I was done waiting for her to slip up, because now, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Hey! She greeted me casually as she walked through the door, tossing her bag onto the counter. I glanced up from my book, forcing a smile. Hey, how was work? She hesitated, just for a second. Then the act. She walked over, kissed my cheek like nothing had changed, like she wasn't walking around with Jonathan Pierce's fingerprints all over her life. Exhausting, she sighed, stretching. Meetings all day. I nodded. Meetings, right? I watched her as she moved through the house, as she showered, as she cooked dinner like everything was fine. She was good at this, good at pretending, but she didn't realize, so was I. That night, when she fell asleep beside me, I picked up my phone and made a call. It rang twice before she answered. Mark. Hello, Vanessa. There was a long pause. Then her voice wary. Why are you calling me? Vanessa used to be Emily's best friend. Until one day she wasn't. Emily never told me why they fell out. Just said Vanessa had betrayed her trust. But after what I read today, I had a feeling Emily was the one with something to hide. I need your help, I said, keeping my voice quiet. It's about Emily and Jonathan Pierce. Silence. Then, Vanessa exhaled sharply. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. My grip on the phone tightened. So you know. A bitter laugh. Oh, Mark. I know everything. My pulse quickened. Then tell me. And she did. Vanessa wasn't just a former friend. She was a former victim. Jonathan had used her just like he was using Emily now. Flattering her. Pulling her into his orbit. Offering her opportunities. in exchange for loyalty. But when Vanessa stopped being useful, when she started pushing back, he ruined her, destroyed her career, turned her into an outcast. And Emily? She had known. She had helped him, betrayed her own best friend just to stay in his good graces. Now it was happening all over again. Only this time I was the one being kept in the dark. When I hung up the call, I sat there in the dark for a long time, listening to Emily's steady breathing beside me. She had lied to me, used me, built an entire second life behind my back. And now, I was gonna burn it all down. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Emily was inches away from me, sleeping peacefully, while I lay awake drowning in the truth. She had betrayed me, not just as a wife but as a person. She had helped destroy Vanessa's life. And now, she was walking the same dangerous path, thinking she could control Jonathan Pierce, thinking she could use him without getting burned. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up before her, made coffee, stared at the kitchen table, my mind racing. I had enough to confront her, to demand answers. But I didn't want answers. I wanted evidence. I wanted undeniable proof. So when Emily walked into the kitchen, yawning and stretching like she didn't have a second life built on lies, I smiled at her. Morning. She kissed my cheek. Morning. And just like that, the game continued. Step 1. Get access to more of her secrets. Her phone was always locked. But her tablet? That was a different story. Emily kept it in the office, claiming she only used it for work. I knew better now. That evening, while she was in the shower, I powered it on. No password. Amateur mistake. Emily. The messages were right there. Emily. Asterisk, I miss you already. Can't wait for next weekend. Asterisk, Jonathan. Asterisk, patience. Love. We have big things ahead of us. Asterisk. My grip tightened on the tablet. Love. He called her love. I scrolled further. Plans. Schedules. Mentions of meetings with politicians. Discussions of leaks, influence, power moves. Emily wasn't just having an affair. She was deep in Jonathan's world. And I had proof. I took screenshots of everything. Then I powered off the tablet and placed it exactly where I found it. Step 2. Find out what Emily had done to Vanessa. I called Vanessa the next day. She answered on the first ring. What did you find? I told her. Every text. Every lie. She wasn't surprised. But when I asked about what happened between them, about how Emily betrayed her, Vanessa hesitated. Then quietly, she sold me out. What? My pulse quickened. Vanessa exhaled. Jonathan used me the same way he's using her. But I didn't fall in line like she did. I started pushing back. So he had Emily leak information about me. Twisted everything to make me look like a liability. And she did it? Yes, Vanessa said bitterly. Without hesitation. I clenched my jaw. Emily hadn't just fallen into this world. She had embraced it. And if she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was dead wrong. Step 3. Set the trap. Emily and Jonathan were planning to attend an important public event next week. Political fundraiser. Jonathan was making moves, and Emily was part of it. It would be the perfect stage. The perfect moment to expose them both. Because now, I had everything I needed. Betrayal has a way of sharpening a man. I had spent weeks in the dark, wondering, questioning, doubting myself. Not anymore. Now I knew the truth. And knowing the truth meant I could weaponize it. Emily and Jonathan's political fundraiser was in 6 days. That was my deadline. By the time they stepped onto that stage, smiling for the cameras, shaking hands with powerful men who thought they were untouchable, I would make sure everything came crashing down. Step 1. Find the weak spots. Jonathan Pierce was careful. He had spent decades building his empire, weaving a network of power and influence that made men afraid of him. But every empire has cracks, and I just needed to find one. Vanessa was my best lead. After what Emily and Jonathan did to her, she had spent years digging, searching for a way to expose him. She had names, records, witnesses, Some were too afraid to talk. But one was willing. Her name was Sophie Hale. She had been one of Jonathan's assistants, a woman he had used and discarded. She had been silent for years. But now she was ready to talk. And I was going to make sure the world heard her. Step 2. The digital trail. I already had Emily's emails, the messages, the travel records, the meetings, but I needed more. So I hacked into our shared cloud storage. Emily had been careful, deleting messages, wiping call logs. But she forgot one thing. Her phone automatically backed up to the cloud every night. And there it was. A voice memo. I hit play. Jonathan's voice came through, smooth and arrogant. Asterisk, you've done well, Emily. If this deal goes through, we'll own half the state. No one can touch us. Asterisk. Emily's voice was softer, but just as confident. Asterisk, and Mark? He won't be a problem. Asterisk. Silence. Then Jonathan chuckled. Asterisk. He never was. Asterisk. I closed my eyes, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She had written me off. Dismissed me like I was nothing. Like I wasn't even worth fearing. That was her mistake. Step 3. Make it public. The fundraiser was going to be broadcasted. Politicians, businessmen, the press, everyone would be watching. And now? So would the rest of the world. I compiled everything: emails, texts, financial transactions, the voice recording. Then I scheduled an automatic leak. The moment Emily and Jonathan stepped onto that stage, their entire double life would be exposed live. Their reputations? Gone. Their power? Shattered. And when the truth hit, I would be standing right there watching them fall. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. Betrayal changes a man. I used to be the trusting husband, the man who believed in love, who thought honesty was the foundation of a marriage. Now I was something else. Something colder, sharper. And Emily had no idea that her final hours of deception were ticking away. She was radiant the night before the fundraiser. Dressed in a silk gown, sliding in earrings I never bought, humming softly to herself as she prepared for her big night. She thought she was untouchable. I sat on the bed watching her, memorizing this moment. Because tomorrow, she wouldn't be this woman anymore. She wouldn't be anything. You seem quiet, she said, turning toward me, fastening a bracelet around her wrist. I smiled. Just thinking. She walked over, standing between my legs, resting her hands on my shoulders. About what? I reached up, fingers brushing against the expensive jewelry she wore. Gifts from another man. A week ago, the thought of her with Jonathan would have destroyed me. Now it only fueled me. Just about how lucky I am, I murmured. Her smile widened. I love you, Mark. I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned in and kissed her. Slow, deliberate, kiss of goodbye. She had no idea. The final preparations. Everything was in place. The leak was scheduled. At precisely 8:15 p.m., the moment Jonathan took the stage, the world would see everything. Emails, financial transactions, audio recordings, exposing not just their affair, but their corruption, bribery, money laundering, political manipulation. It wouldn't just ruin them, it would bury them. That night, I lay awake while Emily slept beside me. One final night in this broken marriage. One final moment before I erased her from my life. Tomorrow, the world would know her for what she really was. And me? I would finally be free. The night of the fundraiser arrived. A grand ballroom, shimmering under chandeliers, filled with the most powerful people in the city. Politicians, CEOs, journalists. And at the center of it all, Emily and Jonathan, the perfect pair. Smiling, laughing, toasting to a future built on lies. They had no idea that tonight, it all ended. I stood in the crowd, blending in, a drink in my hand, my pulse steady. I had nothing to be nervous about, because I wasn't the one with secrets. They were. And in exactly 3 minutes, those secrets would belong to everyone. Jonathan took the stage first. The room quieted. The cameras turned toward him. His voice was smooth, calculated, the voice of a man who had convinced the world he was untouchable. He thanked his guests, spoke about power, ambition, legacy. Emily stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her eyes gleaming. She had never looked at me that way, because I had never been her future. I had only been a stepping stone. At exactly 8:15 p.m., my phone vibrated in my pocket. The leak was live. Within seconds, the shift in the room was palpable. Whispers, murmurs, guests pulling out their phones, scrolling through the bombshell that had just detonated online. Emails, transactions, the voice recording, a real-time public execution. Then, from the back of the room, a voice. Jonathan, what do you have to say about this? Silence. Jonathan frowned, confused, until a journalist raised their phone for the entire room to see. And on the screen, his own words. Asterisk, you've done well, Emily. If this deal goes through, we'll own half the state. No one can touch us. Asterisk. Emily's face drained of color. Jonathan's jaw locked. And the press? They pounced. Are these financial documents real? Emily, can you confirm your relationship with Mr. Pierce? Is it true that you betrayed your own husband to work with him? Emily turned to Jonathan, panicked. But he was already stepping away from her. Because Jonathan Pierce wasn't the kind of man who went down alone. And if he was sinking, Emily was going down with him. She looked out into the crowd, desperate. Then her eyes locked onto mine. Realization dawned. And for the first time in this entire game, she looked at me with fear. Because she finally understood. I did this. I smiled, raised my glass, and then I walked away. Chaos erupted. The grand ballroom, once filled with elegance and power, descended into madness. Jonathan was surrounded. Reporters firing questions at him like bullets. Flashing cameras capturing his downfall in real time. Emily was frozen. Her perfect world had just collapsed, and she had nowhere to run. I didn't stay to watch the wreckage. I had already won. I walked out of the ballroom, the night air crisp against my skin, feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear security pushing back reporters. I could hear Emily's voice, desperate, breaking. Jonathan, say something. Jonathan, don't just leave me here. A bitter laugh rose in my chest. Of course, now that the truth was out, Jonathan was cutting her loose. He didn't love her. He never did. She had been useful to him until she wasn't. Now, she was just another casualty. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Vanessa, I answered. It's all over the news. She breathed, almost in disbelief. Mark, you actually did it. I smirked, leaning against the hood of my car. No, Vanessa, I said. We did it. There was a pause, then laughter. Genuine. Relieved. For the first time in years, she said. Jonathan Pierce finally lost. I glanced back at the entrance of the ballroom, where the man who had ruined so many lives was now fighting to save his own. He wouldn't. His empire was finished. And Emily? She was about to lose everything, too. I was about to get into my car when I heard it. Mark! I didn't turn right away. I let her run to me. When I finally faced her, Emily was breathless, frantic. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess, her makeup smudged. She wasn't the confident, elegant woman she had been 10 minutes ago. She was a wreck. Mark, she swallowed hard, her voice shaking. I can explain. I laughed. Explain what, Emily? I asked coolly. How you lied to me. How you used me. How you threw away our marriage for a man who just abandoned you the moment things got tough. Tears pooled in her eyes. I made a mistake. I tilted my head. Which one? She flinched. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You made a mistake choosing him? I asked. Or did you make a mistake thinking I'd never find out? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. She wasn't sorry she betrayed me. She was sorry she got caught. Mark, please, she whispered. Just let me come home. We can fix this. Esther here. This woman I had once loved. This woman who had destroyed me. And I felt nothing. I leaned in, just close enough for her to hear me. No.
Emily, y murmurad.
You're never coming home. Her breath hitched. I took one last look at her ruined, shattered expression, then turned. And I walked away. For good. I didn't look back. Not when I reached my car. Not when I heard Emily's ragged breaths behind me. Not when she choked out my name one last time. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. For the first time in months, I was the one leaving her behind. And God, it felt good. As I pulled onto the highway, my phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Jonathan Pierce resigns amidst scandal. I smirked. The headlines were everywhere now. His reputation was in flames, and Emily? She was burning with him. She had bet everything on that man, her marriage, her dignity, her future. And now she had nothing. No husband, no career, no more secret deals. Just the wreckage she created. I spent the night at a hotel, knowing Emily would probably go home, hoping to talk her way back in. Let her. She could stand outside all night for all I cared. By morning, I had already called my lawyer. File for divorce, I said. Today. A pause. Then, understood. It was that simple. No long discussions.
No hesitaschen.
Because there was nothing left to save. By noon, Emily's number was blocked. By evening, her belongings were packed into boxes. I left them by the front door, sent her a short message. Come get your stuff. After today, you're not welcome here. She read it immediately. No reply. I didn't expect one. Because she knew, just like I did, this was the end. The moment Emily saw my message, she showed up at the house. Not immediately. No. She took her time like she thought this was still a game she could win. But she couldn't. Not anymore. I watched from the window as her car pulled into the driveway. She hesitated before getting out, like she was gathering the courage to face me. She looked different now. Not the polished, confident woman who had walked out of our marriage months ago. This Emily was disheveled, uncertain, afraid. She wasn't used to losing, and she had just lost everything. I didn't let her inside. I stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed, watching as she slowly approached the boxes stacked by the door. Her eyes flickered up to meet mine. Mark, can we talk? I smiled. A cold, empty smile. We are talking. She swallowed hard. I mean, really talk. Just us. I shook my head. There is no us, Emily. She flinched. Please. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I cut in. I understand that you threw away our marriage for a man who just abandoned you. I understand that you used me like I was some blind fool. And I understand that now you have no one left. Her breath hitched. Mark, I made a mistake. I laughed, low and bitter. Which one? Sleeping with him? Lying to me? Selling your soul for a career? Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I was doing the right thing for my future. I thought. I stepped forward, my voice calm, controlled. You thought I wouldn't find out. She looked away. She couldn't deny it. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around us. The world was moving on, and I was ready to do the same. I don't love him, Emily whispered. I raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to mean something to me? Her lower lip trembled. I still love you. Something inside me snapped. You don't love me, I said quietly. You love control. You love power. You love winning. Her eyes widened, like she couldn't believe I saw through her. I stepped back, motioning toward the boxes. Take your things, Emily, and take your lies with you. She opened her mouth, desperate. Mark. I turned away, walking back inside, and I shut the door in her face. She stood there for a long time. I heard her sob once, just once. Then silence. And finally, the sound of her car pulling away. She was gone. For good. And this time, I wasn't losing anything. I was getting my life back. The silence after Emily left was different. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was peace. For the first time in months, my house didn't feel like a prison. Felt mine again. The next morning, I woke up without the usual knot in my chest. No dread, no anxiety, just the quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. Emily was gone. and I wasn't going to waste another second thinking about what we used to be. I had spent too much time trying to hold on to something that had died long ago. Now, I was finally free. By noon, I got confirmation that our divorce was moving forward. There would be no drawn-out battles, no desperate attempts from Emily to claw her way back in. She knew she had no leverage anymore. Jonathan was ruined, her career destroyed, and me, I was just getting started. I met Vanessa for coffee later that day. She looked different, lighter, like a woman who had finally gotten justice for the hell she had been put through. She grinned as I sat across from her. "So, how's it feel to be a free man?" I smirked, taking a sip of my coffee. "Better than I thought." She studied me for a moment. "You did the right thing, Mark." I nodded slowly. "I know," because for once I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't doubting whether I had been too cruel, too calculating. Emily had made her choices, and now I was making mine. A few days later, I took a drive down to the coast. No purpose, no schedule, just me, the open road, and the realization that my life was my own again. For months, I had been trapped in a cycle of suspicion, betrayal, and anger. Now, I was moving forward. Maybe I'd travel. Maybe I'd take up an old hobby. Maybe I'd even start dating again. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't worried about the future. Because I owned it now. Not Emily. Not Jonathan. Not the past. Just me. And that was more than enough. As I stood by the ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore, I took a deep breath. Then I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and deleted Emily's number. For good. I exhaled slowly, and then, without a second thought, I walked away.